Hello, chess fans. This is Chess Training 2200, looking to start a tactical training video. For those of you not familiar with tactics in chess, if you're a beginner, this would be a great source to help you get started, get you warmed up and understanding a little bit better. And for those of you that are advanced, I'm sure you'll find value out of some of the later puzzles we get into. So let's get started. Okay, so let's see, what do we have here? All right, we're almost pawning. King is in the corner. So let's see. Okay, simple enough. Okay, we pawn to a queen, causing a mate. Oh, we're black, excuse me. Oh, simple enough. So we got back rank mate. Okay, check. Let's see, what do we got? Okay, we're going to defend. So let's see, discovered attack on the white queen. Right, bishop's cutting off the king, so the king can't castle. We have our white square bishop causing a check. Seems like the best way to get out of the threat. Okay, we have a back rank mate. So as you can see here, looking at the squares that the queen would cover, king has no escape squares. All the pieces for white are on their starting points. The rook, the bishop, the rook here. Most likely the queen was going rook hunting. So pick that up. Okay, simple back rate mate. Okay, let's see. Same thing. So the king is cut off by its castled pawns. Looks like we have a queen and rook battery onto the back rank. Okay. All right. White is attacking our queen, also skewing our bishop, but we have a mating pattern here on a queen and bishop battery to the H pawn. Always go with what's more important. Your threats for checkmate will always be more important. So something to always keep in mind. Simple rook queen checkmating pattern. Okay, bishop comes in, skewering our two rooks. But let's look at what checkmating pattern we have. Always when you're looking to attack the king, you're looking for checks and potential checkmating patterns if you can set them up or solve for them. So any threats on your pieces is minuscule compared to delivering checkmate. We have a simple one here. Bishop comes in, causing a check, covering all the squares, and the knight covers the only escape square for the king. Okay. Rook and queen battery. We can deliver checkmate here on b1, even though we're attacked. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, a nice checkmating pattern here with the queen. Um, if a king, if you can get close to a king where you're facing off with him, and the two corner squares, as you can see here, are blocked by the opponent's pieces, the queen covers all of the other squares. So as long as she's defended, that's a simple checkmating pattern to always keep in mind if you notice that your opponent has pieces blocking the escape squares. Obviously, this is defended. That's why we can deliver this mate here. Okay, so let's see. We have even pieces. All right. All right, so this is one where we're going to use the tactics of a check on the king. Since the queen is undefended and only the bishop is blocking the pathway between our queen once we move her here, we can then use, after the king moves, the pawn to come in to deliver an attack on the queen deliver an attack on the bishop to skewer the queen. He'll have to give up the bishop in order to protect the queen. So we deliver a check. Well, if the queen moves, we just pick up the bishop. Okay, this is a nice checkmating pattern where we put our queen on e2. This will push the king back on the back rank, considering that there are no pawns pushed. And the only square then protecting the e1 square is the queen, followed by our rook then coming in to deliver checkmate. So push the king back, sacrifice the queen, back rank mate. Let's see, what do we got next? Okay, king is here. Let's look for a check. So we obviously have knight coming into d4. We then have a fork. This blocks the king also too from escaping. We have at least an exchange with the rook. Let's try to work this out. If we were to go check, king has one escape square. We can either then pick up the rook or bring our rook in to the fight. So this definitely causes problems. Let's cause problems. Okay, so bishop came in and took our rook. We obviously have a fork here on the king. Picking up the rook. We're also hitting the bishop here. So let's deliver. Let's pick up and then pick up the pawn. And then we get our knight out. So in that situation, it's more so about not only gaining the material, but because we're attacking two different pieces at the same time, both the rook on the fork and the bishop that was given up on the exchange. So let's see, what do we have here? What's next? Okay, so we have the bishop covering the one square that the king can go to. So the king has no squares. We could, since there's no way for white to get any defensive pieces over here on the H file, and the king has no escape squares, we can use our knight to deliver a check, forcing the H pawn to have to take, followed by then the queen replacing where the knight is on the H file, delivering mate. As you can see, these pieces, the white's pieces are blocked by all of the pawns, so can't get across to help defend. Okay, so let's see. King on the starting square. We have one check here with the rook. We have another check with the queen. We have a check here on the king, even though the knight is defending it. We still want to keep that in mind, though. We could deliver a potential check. But what I see is if we deliver a check with the rook, the king has to either move or block. If the bishop was the block for the king, we can push the pawn forward attacking the bishop. That would give us an exchange. If the king moves, the king can't castle anymore, and then the fireworks begin from there. With a potential check for the knight to come in on the king here, followed by attacking also f7 pawn, forking the two here, so this seems to be right. Let's go with that. And let's push forward, okay. All right, king's on the back rank, doesn't have anywhere to escape to. We can deliver check, followed up with another check, but then we pick up the queen because the queen has a discovered attack on her. So let's perform. And then we come back to defend. Okay, makes sense. All right. Okay, we have a nice mate here. So knight onto f2 square. Hits the king. King can't pick up the bishop because the knight defends. King can't then escape because the bishop defends, and there's nothing that can capture the knight. All right, let's see. What do we have here? All right, this is a nice mating pattern. So whenever you get a king close to the edge and you can get the king onto the edge of the board, forcing it there by either through capture or after a check, there's no choice but to move. always concentrate on the pawns that could help out in the attack. A nice mating pattern with a rook would be to have a rook that is attacking the king, but the king is forced to come into an area where you form a mating net. It's a little triangle mating net using your pawns around it. So if we deliver a check with the rook, the king is forced to take the knight. Now the rook cuts off the king. We then deliver a check with the pawn, forcing the king down into that triangle. And now we deliver the final blow with the rook. Okay. All right. So we have doubled up rooks on the F file. Okay. All right. This is a nice one. So there's a couple of mating patterns here. Obviously, knight and queen working together can always deliver a mate, but at the same exact time, since the queen defends, we got to try to deflect the queen off of this mating square. How do we do that? Well, since we have doubled rooks, we exchange everything. This forces the queen to have to take after the rook recaptures, and we recapture the rook, which then alleviates the checkmating square. So one rook pair, two rook pair, and then you deliver the mate. Okay, let's see what we have here now. We have a bishop. Okay. All right, so we know we're looking to pawn, but we have to defend against our opponent getting their queen. All right, so I'm seeing here, since there are two light squares that these pawns will queen on, we have to get this bishop into the fight, but the king is obviously taking control of the one square that we can utilize to cover this pawn if we pick up the b pawn first. So what I'm looking for is a way to cover the d1 square without the king being able to capture. So if we look to go around, we can cover that d1 square before this pawn can queen. Also, too, we'll pick up this pawn even if he decides to push on the capture. So here, come around. Now the king is coming towards. We take, sacrifice. All right. Let's see. What do we have next? Okay, we have a queen and bishop battery on our king. White's looking to deliver for a mate. We have the same thing over here, but the knight is defending. So if our knight captures his knight, delivers a check on the king, either the pawn or the bishop has to take back, and then we can deliver mate. Pretty simple. All right. Right. White's attacking our queen. There's a potential back rank mate because no pawns are pushed in front of the king. The knight is defending the d1 square. So is the rook. The rook's defending the e1 square. So let's see, what can we do here? Okay, the only thing defending the b1 rook that's attacking us is the knight. So this is a factor of deflection followed by back rank mate. So we sacrifice the queen, follow it up with a check, and then pick up the rook for the mate. And as you can see, a lot of these patterns start with a check followed by some form of a theme. The theme, whether it be deflection, whether it be skewer, whether it be x-ray, these are all tactical terms that you can look into more. If you are interested in me making more videos on that, please leave comments in the description below when I upload this, and I'll definitely look to make more videos on those tactical points. So let's see, what do we have here? Okay, let's see if we can deliver a check. We have check here. King takes, obviously rook would go here. That's too easy. If we deliver, and then he goes here. We have the rook then coming in. But this opens up discovery attacks on us, plus our queen is already being attacked. Interesting. All right, well, it's simpler one. If we take the queen, rook takes, followed by a back rank mate. Yeah, it seems to be it. That makes sense. Even if he tries to block the rook with a check, we can still take the bishop, and then after he takes, perform the same task. So queen takes, bishop blocks, we take the bishop, and then deliver the back rank mate. Makes sense. Okay, we're in check. And now the opponent has their knight and queen coming after our king. So we have to be very careful not to put ourselves into a mating pattern. So this is more about defense. So let's see, what do we got? If we block, king comes up. I mean, queen comes up, excuse me. This looks like we're going to have to defend with an interference. Let's see. Okay, and then what if we block? If he comes check, we can then run away. Delivers another check, we can run away, getting closer to our pieces to help us defend. Let's block with the queen. Okay. Yep, and then we run. Okay. Simple defensive play. Just trying to stay alive until we can get back to our pieces in order to help defend against the potential checks. You don't want to get into a checkmating pattern or a repetitive check where you're winning the game and your opponent can then draw. We don't want that. So let's see. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, this is a nice one. So once again, where are our checks? So we have the check on the H file. We have the dark square bishop cutting off the king, so the king can't escape. But one thing that I am noticing is this knight. So since there's no pin on this knight, if we deliver a check, king takes on h2, we then have a potential fork between the king and the queen, which then gets us back in the game. So I'll take that. Okay, simple enough. Okay, let's see. So we have a check on the king. Right. If we go check and he takes, we have a discovered attack on the h1 a8 diagonal. It's something to keep in mind. But what does that lead us to? Even if we drop the knight in on d4. All right, let's see. Well, what if we use the mate, the potential mate, to attack this bishop here? As you can see, this bishop is undefended. So we can hop the knight into d4 first. If the opponent decides to trade, well, it doesn't matter because then we have mate. And if they try to get in the way, What about that? What if they decide to get in the way? It doesn't matter because we can take because we cut off the rook from attacking us. I like that. I like that. That looks good. And the queen can't even come back to get in the way because one, the queen would get taken since this pawn is pinned to the king. But at the same exact time, the knight covers that square also too. So that wouldn't make any sense. So I like that. Let's go with it. Yep. He pushes forward. And now, oh, even better though. See, now that he just blocked his own queen from coming back, we can potentially pick up a rook now, forking the two. That's why I never rush. You can always get a better move depending on what your opponent plays. Another good word of advice. Let's see. Yeah, I'll go with that. Full piece or do an exchange. Interesting. Hmm. Technically, this would be 3 free points where the exchange would only be 2. That's interesting. Would you take the bishop or would you go for the exchange? Yeah, I don't like the way this bishop is attacking us here. Yep, take the bishop. That's 3 points as opposed to, for those that don't know about the point system, what I'm trying to get at is that a rook is worth 5 points in the game of chess while a knight and a bishop is worth 3. So it's better to take 3 points instead of performing an exchange and only getting 2. All right, let's see. Black. We're working our way up to queening. Okay. All right, this is a good one. So if we sacrifice the queen with the rook, the knight has to take back, because if he doesn't, we're going to be up major material. Then you pick up the knight with the king, and since the pawn is too far along, this king cannot capture this pawn because in king pawn endgames or just pawn promotion in general, if the king cannot step within this box, since the king can't step within the box before you push again, you're going to beat the king to the finish line. So another thing to keep in mind, the way you figure that out is wherever the pawn is that you're judging this from, draw a diagonal till you reach the edge of the board, and then that box is where the king has to be able to step in before you push closer to the finish line. If the king is always one step behind, you'll get there every time. So let's take, and now since we're within the box of this pawn, from where it was, remember its starting point was here, we can step into this smaller box and get there. And now he can't get to us, and we queen. All right. All right, so we can see that we're down material. 2 rooks versus a rook and a knight. Right off the bat, I see a potential mating pattern. And even if this is pushed to defend, the knight can jump in because this pawn is pinned to the king. So, okay. We have no choice. Yeah, because then he can't capture. Stops all checks. Interesting. Yep. Right, let's go on. Let's see what we have here. So as you can see, we're already into the 30s. We're getting up to 1700. We're moving along, making good timing. Okay. We're cutting the king off on the back rank. King can't go to h4. Our queen is pinned, but we can still use it in the defense. So yeah, so even though our queen is pinned, obviously we can pick up this rook, but if we remove our queen from defending the h7 pawn, white's looking to deliver a mate themselves. So we have to be conscious of that. But I see if I push my pawn forward, delivering a check, since the rook is cutting off the king from escaping, he has to move to h4, and then we snap up the pawn. And it's a ladder mate, because even though the queen is pinned, you can still use that delivering a mate, because it's all about who gets to the king first. So check, followed by ladder mate. Okay, let's see what we have here. Okay, so we could deliver a check 2 ways, 3 ways, 4 ways, but looks like the knight coming in would force the queen to either give herself up or the king to step onto the same diagonal as the queen. Then you can perform a double check. In a double checking pattern, the king has to move. No piece can be captured. So what I mean by that is as the knight hops in here to f7, delivering check on the king steps onto the diagonal, then you perform a discover check with the queen and the knight hitting the king. King then has only two options, stepping further out or moving back into the h8 square. Then let's see if the king steps out. King steps out. No, we can then deliver a check. King steps out further. Then we can hop back into the g8 square, which then would be a fork on the king and queen. So this is a little bit more in depth, but I like to try to work out all of the patterns before placing a move. Check, 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 then fork. So using a series of checks in order to get to a nice tactical fork is always a nice pattern to recognize. Okay, so we have a discovered attack on the king here, since this bishop and rook are working together. We can place our bishop on h3, and there's nothing that can defend that. There's nothing that gets in the way. Yep, that's simple enough. That cut off all of the squares for the king since the g pawn was pushed in that last puzzle. Okay, so let's see. This looks like a endgame pattern. So we're black. We push up to g4, which is a skewer, pushing the king out the way and going for the rook. But then we have to get our king in front of the pawn in order to get the pawn to the finish line. So let's work this out. Check, take. Now obviously we can't go this way to get in front, so we have to go this way to get in front, or straight to it depending on where our opponent moves to. So up, and now you take the opposition by moving in front. Opposition is just a king standoff between each other on who has to make the first move to moving out of the way, allowing the king to pass by. Okay. All right, so we have the rook, we have the knight, and two bishops attacking the king here. So we have a discovered attack. Our bishop is on the same diagonal with our piece and the king. So if we step back out of the way, the king has two moves, either move to the corner or the opponent has to block with the bishop. If the opponent blocks with the bishop, I mean blocks with the rook where our bishop is pinning it, we can then take the rook, delivering a check. This forces the king now to the corner since our dark square bishop would cover the only other escape square, and then our rook can come into the action on the h7 square because our knight, remember in the beginning, was moved in order to defend that pawn. So the bishop is going to take, king moves to the corner, and now our rook comes into play. Okay. This looks like a simple mate. So again, remember, as I said earlier, if you can get close to the king with your queen, always check the surrounding pieces to the king. What are the escape squares if they're in the way blocking from the king moving? And as you can see, these are the only squares the king has, which the queen covers all of them from this square and nothing can get in front. The opponent's queen is out of position, so we can deliver a simple mate. Okay. Once again, let's take notice of the pieces around the king. So what are our squares that the king can go to? All right. We know we have a check here, but first, I think this makes more sense. So the reason why I rather the rook over the queen is because then the king can get to the dark squares and get away. We don't want that. We want to try to keep the king as cluttered and off the squares as possible. So by delivering a rook check, the king can't go to the e7 square. The king has to go to the e8 square. Remember, the queen is cutting off the whole g file. And then we can come in on g6, delivering the check. The rook has to block, and since our rook is here, we can take, delivering mate. So, okay. All right. As we can see here, this bishop is pretty terrible. Knight is blocked in. It's pinned by our rook. We have a pawn on f3, which is taking away the only escape square. Our bishop is also defending that, so that's good. Let's see what we have, if anything at all. Okay. Hmm. All right, he's attacking us. How can we get to this king? Let's see. Okay, I'm seeing this. So I'm looking at what pieces can I potentially get to the king. And this knight seems to be the only one that's not doing anything pivotal. So if we rotate the knight into this square that delivers check and mate, if everything stays, like how can he defend? Can he defend if he sacrifices? Well, this bishop just replaces it after we've moved, still threatening this mate. And even if he delivers a check, we can still capture and then replace it after the knight moves out the way. So yeah, he'll have to give up a ton of material to further this game. So, yep, sacrificing the bishop, so we replace it with ours. And the rest is history. Okay, so how many checks do we have? We have one, we have two, but don't forget about this diagonal check. This is the key. These are the obvious checks along the H file, but always look for these triangle checks, as I like to call them, because it allows the rook to do exactly what the queen is doing on the H file, cutting off the king. But let's see, is this queen blocks? Does that make sense? Then we can go here. Bishop blocks. No, maybe that doesn't make any sense. Let's see. Okay. Hmm. What if the rook just goes back? That's true too. The rook can always go back. Okay, let's analyze these. If we deliver a check, he slides over. But we have this pawn here. This can push him out further. Okay. Okay, so if we deliver a check and the king runs, we can push this pawn forward, delivering another check, forcing the king onto these 3 squares, and then we can pick up the queen on the back rank because the only thing defending the queen would be the king at that point. That looks like, yeah, that looks like it. That makes sense. So we're utilizing the queen to basically to flush the king out. Then we're sacrificing a pawn in order to deflect the king away from the defense of the queen, and we pick up material. Check, deflection, pick up the queen. All right, we've made it to 40. We're already up to 21, 29, so we're getting closer to the master level. All right, let's see. We're in check. We obviously have a mating threat going on here at the same time, so we need to defend all checks to get to that point. We can't block because that just allows the bishop to be captured. If we step on light squares, this is going to allow the opponent's light square bishop to come into play. If we step here onto g3, there's no check here. Again, always looking for those triangle checks. Okay, no check here. Can't come in this way. Yeah, queen would have to sacrifice herself, but then you just pick up the queen. That makes sense. Yep. All right, let's see. First thing we're looking for, king squares. King has no squares really here to go to. They're threatening check. Okay, so let's see. What could we do? What could we do? Oh wow, a lot of sacrificing here on this one. It looks like. Okay, so what am I noticing? We have our 2 rooks here that are in the fight, but nowhere near the king. So if we can cause checks to keep the king moving, we can later get our rooks into the game on the first rank and force a nice bishop and rook checkmating pattern. So let's see, what do we have here? If we go check, pull back the bishop, forces the king up, followed by sacrificing another rook, flushing the king out, followed by now allowing our bishop to defend and cut off all the squares to the king. Okay. Well, first thing I see is forming a queen rook battery on the king. Okay. We can push up, forking the 2. That wouldn't make any sense because even if he took, that opens up the rook on our queen, but at the same exact time, even if he let us take, he can just shield himself behind our pawn. So if we were to push this pawn, oops, sorry, if we were to push this pawn forward to g6, and even if he allowed us to take, that wouldn't make any sense because then he can shield himself. All right, what if we did just go for that? Is there any way that he can escape? Yeah, he can push. We then block the king in and then capture. That makes sense. So what I'm seeing is that if we develop our queen and rook battery, like we were saying, what lines of defense does the opponent have from stopping us from getting to the h7 square? If if the king wants to run, the rook has to get out of the way or this pawn has to move. But even still, after taking, the king would be stuck on the back rank because again, like I said, keep in mind of what pieces are in front of the king, so this way you know how the king could be able to run. Right? Now we push our pawn forward to lock the king back in, followed by a check, pushing the king over, and this pawn plays the key role, stopping the king from fleeing. Okay, we're in check. We're in a double check, as you can see here. So we have to move our king now. So let's see. If we sidestep to d1, the rook can come down, picks up our queen because the pawn defends it. So it's a rook and pawn for our queen. That's no good. That's not what we want. So we have to go here. We can get another check. Huh. Do we even want to do that? That's interesting. What if we just took and get out the way? We pick up the one, and that can't be delivered. He can still check, but we can defend with the g3 pawn, but then the queen can come into play here, and that's going to be disaster. Rook, queen, and bishop attacking our king. I'm also thinking about fleeing, which seems like the better case scenario in this. Let's see, if we take, check, what if I got behind here? But then he can drop his rook down because now the bishop defends it, and that'll pin our king and queen together. This is looking more like the course of action because he does not have a light square bishop and we do, and that light square bishop is a beast right now in the center of the board. Oh, I was wrong. All right, well, it's bound to happen. We've made it to the master level, so these are getting very complicated. Let's see. All right. White to move. Okay. We know that black wants to queen his pawn. Hmm. We can fork. King has to move. We then take. But we also don't want to draw out the game. If we go check and we went for the bishop, what does the king have as options? Always look to see what the king would have as options. The king can't go here, here, here. King can step away. But then how do we get back to this pawn if we took the bishop? We can't, because then the pawn pushes. And even if we brought a knight in, it's too late. I'm just trying to work out what are the potential possibilities here if I went check again then on the king. Hmm. We're trying to save our pawn because two knights endgame is not winnable also too. That would be a draw. So I'm seeing this to at least stop our opponent from having a win, and then working out from there how to get our pawn up the board, deflecting this bishop off of this diagonal. Okay, check, definitely. This is here. We have to stop this pawn from moving. If this pawn moves, the game's over. Ah, this is a form of Zugzwang. I see it. Okay. So what am I calculating here? As I said before, if the knight takes the pawn, bishop then takes back. But now if we bring our other knight into the situation, cutting off this bishop, remember the king is on here on b2, and we would then be cutting off the bishop on b4, and the knight covers the only squares that the king can go to defend the bishop, or really the only one square, excuse me, and then we can pick up. If he then takes our knight, we're in front of the pawn. Yep, that's it. Take, block the bishop in, and now we're in front of the pawn in order to get the pawn up the board for a queen. That was a nice pattern. Oh wow, a lot going on here. Let's see, what do we got? Okay. All right. Knight jumped in here, forking our two pieces. There's a ton going on. Let's see. We have a queen bishop battery. Interesting. We also have a passed pawn that could be good in an endgame. A lot going on here. And I want to end on a good note. Can't just take, because then he takes the queen, so we gotta deal with this. If we took, he took, we take back, hitting the knight at the same exact time. And the knight doesn't have anywhere to go outside of this square. And then we can bring our bishop into play, forking his queen and rook. And what would we be giving up? We're giving up a queen. Let me calculate this again. So queen takes, bishop takes, rook takes, hitting the knight. If the knight gets defended, we could even take, forcing him to take back, which opens up the king even more, and then follow it up with this fork on the rook and bishop. I mean, a rook and queen, excuse me. Yeah, I like that. Let's go for it. Right? Yep, that was a nice one. Okay, let's see. So again, since we're around, what pieces are around the king, cutting off what squares, something to keep an eye on. We obviously have him attacking our queen, but we can pin his to his king, winning it back just the same. Interesting. So if we attack, if he takes, obviously we take back, and that leads to a check, and then we can get our queen out of the way. So that's not going to be what the opponent is looking to do. I see checks here and here. Obviously this is a check too, but that allows the king to get off of this file, which we don't want because we like this potential pin. If we go check, he goes down to e7. We got to worry about the other rook on the other side. But we also have this check at the same exact time, which then forces the king to move up a little bit more, unless if he's going to give up his rook, but then it allows our queen to get back into play, so that doesn't work on his behalf. So let's see. Up, if he goes back, well, then we can take, and that'll lead to a potential discovery check. If he takes back, then we pin. That looks good. Yeah, so if we go back, his options are either to go forward. He can also block with the bishop. That's true too. But then in doing so, that allows us to pin his queen because now our queen is not being attacked anymore. I like that. Yep. Now we have check, brings the queen out more. Okay, this king is getting really cut off. Ah, we have another check now, see? Those triangle checks. Got to be on the lookout for them. Yep, that makes sense. Gets the queen out of the way, opens up the ability for the rooks to come into play to deliver some checks. So we're getting into some serious puzzles now. 2471. Trying to end on a high note also too. Let's see, what do we have? Okay, well, we're getting attacked. We see that the king, again, always double checking to see what escape squares the king has. We can trade off a pair of rooks. Okay. Interesting. This knight is undefended. Queen is undefended. I'm looking at trading a pair of rooks. What if we then brought the queen up attacking the rook? If the rook slides over to attack us because now the queen defends, and our bishop is going to then be hit, but we can also then slide our rook into place, going for another mate. That's interesting. If he takes like this, we don't, well, we'll be in check, so we'll have to take. That's interesting. Okay, let's see. That's what I'm looking at. I think that's the way to go. I think it's rook takes, exchange, come up here, forcing this rook to make a decision. You can always bring your other rook over to reinforce if this rook on e8 decides to attack you. Because again, we're up material, so we're looking to exchange. We're up material. Yep, he comes in and takes. We have to take back. Now we can bring the rook over, reinforcing the backwards mate. That's what I was looking at. So you see if we bring the rook over and the queen gets captured, we have a backwards mate. Because again, always double check where the opponent's king's escape squares are. I think that makes sense. Yep, now he gives it. And this allows us to exchange more pieces, and now we can win the endgame because we're up a bishop. Okay, let's see. All right, I see this here. Interesting. If we go for the dark square bishop and he takes, well then we can reinforce here with a check and pick up this bishop afterwards, but it seems too simple at a 2500 level. Let's see, what do we got? I can't deliver a check because this bishop picks up and the game is over. Picking up this pawn makes sense to me. Attacking this bishop and potentially going after these two. Nope. All right, that was a bad one. I shouldn't have rushed there. Okay, so we got queen, knight, discovered attack. All right, so let's see, what do we have? Let's count the material first. Three, two rooks, queen. We're down a pawn, actually. If I take, I'm hitting this rook. Is there something better, though? Any potential checks? No potential checks. So, and that hits this rook and also gets in the game, but then the bishop drops here. All right, so if we take, he takes, we got to watch out for back rank makes, because as we can see, we have two pawns defending us, but this knight looks to be a nuisance here. Completely cutting us off. And I don't like this rook. This rook looks like it can skate all the way down to the 8th rank on us. But he's threatening back rank mate also too, because he could exchange off these pieces here and then hit us with it. And then the game's over. So let's see, we got to get rid of stuff. We got to get rid of a few pieces. think the knight has to go. No, that didn't calculate it the whole way through. All right, well, that's all for this video. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. And until the next time, everybody take care. If you like this video, please leave me a comment. Let me know if there's anything that I can improve on. And if you don't mind subscribing to the channel, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a great day.